significant measures were taken to create a level playing ground for elections that will allow citizens to come out and to express their mandate. First of all, we want to commend the National Peace Committee under the leadership of General Abubakar that was able to successfully negotiate a peace accord. Secondly, we want to commend the main traditional ruler in the state, the Oba of Benin, who worked tirelessly to cajole and warn his citizens to keep the peace. We are glad people largely listened to this wise counsel. Thirdly, the President, Mr. President Muhammad Buhari, assured citizens that the state will do all in its power to ensure free and fair elections. Fourthly, and maybe most important, the citizens of Edo felt that the stakes of the elections were very high and expressed their will to come out and defend their mandate under whatever conditions. All these created an atmosphere in which the elections that were organized were credible, widely accepted, and the results indicate that the outcome was indeed the choice of the voters of Edo State. In this context, therefore, we believe that after a thorough analysis of 250 observers deployed all over Edo State, and the reports from 18 journalists from the cable newspaper that we deployed to also report on the happenings, that those elections were conducted in conformity with the laws and regulations for the conduct of elections. We therefore believe it's an important positive step in the development of electoral democracy in Nigeria, and that all the stakeholders played their role correctly. In particular, INEC carried out its role as spelled out in law. The security agencies maintained their neutrality. The political parties largely behaved correctly. Citizens came out and voted. All this for us are positive signs of the march of our electoral democracy. Professor Jinadu will continue from here.
To be at this presentation. I think Jibo has already laid out very clearly the aspects in which the elections conducted last Saturday conformed largely with what we expect of free, credible, and fair elections. While the CDD is drawing attention to that, to show that we are making progress towards electoral integrity, the CDD also feels that it has a responsibility to Nigerians to caution that we do not rest on our oars, to emphasize, as the pre-election atmosphere in Edo clearly shows, there are still serious threats by various actors to the sustainability of democracy in the country. So that as we move ahead, we look back to see where are the snares, where are the minefields that may negatively detract from future elections and setting us back to where we were before. And we just want to draw attention to some of those snares, some of those worrying signals that we should be aware of as we move ahead. And that some of the things we need to do, therefore, is to see to what extent electoral reform can be compacted, can be undertaken to deal with the threats that those, what we call those undercurrents of our political economy, of our history of electoral degeneration in this country. The first one, which was clearly displayed during the Edo elections, and which in fact caused the worry that people felt about the election, is the continuing lack of internal democracy, particularly the selection of candidates for high political offices in the country. So I think we need to find ways of moderating this, to finding how can we in fact ensure that the atmosphere that surrounds the conduct of party primaries are conducted in ways that also conform to the wider concern with the integrity of the electoral process in the country. Political parties cannot benefit from efforts to sanitize the national electoral political process to ensure its credibility, without also doing something themselves to reflect that wider concern at the national level with the credibility of elections. So how political parties conduct their internal affairs, and particularly the selection of their party candidates for high political offices, must be a matter of continuing concern with us. And I think this is somewhere where, as Nigerians, as the electorate, we must find ways of confronting the political parties to conform with party requirements for internal democracy. The second point we need also to emphasize as troubling and we need to avoid as we move ahead is the zero-sum attitude towards political competition, and the extent to which political parties are prepared to use the power of incumbency for partisan political advantage in ways that taint the credibility of elections. I think this is also very, very important. And the significance of Edo in this respect is the apparently clear demonstration we have that the power of incumbency was not as massively employed for this election as was the case in previous years. So, and I think in looking forward, therefore, what do we need to do to prevent this use of power of incumbency? We need to see why is the Edo case an example? Why is it an exemption? So as we move ahead and we say, well, we praise the police for not behaving in perhaps partisan manner, we need to interrogate why is this the case? Is there a certain reason behind it why it was not the case? And is it related, for example, to internal party political processes going ahead towards 2023? The next point I want to make is the proliferation of unethical strategy of campaigning, which creates which in fact taints the electoral process. The use of fake news, the use of hate speech, and so on and so forth. I think this was very, very clear in the process leading up to the Edo elections last week. The other point that we need to make going forward is that we talk of vote buying, of the monetization of the political process, and so on and so forth. I think an underlying structural problem is the huge human development deficits in the country that create this kind of environment of poverty, of unemployment, which the political parties are using, are exploiting in terms of trying to buy their way through the political process. So I think we need again to, moving forward, to see how can we in fact ensure not just the spirit, but also the letter of Chapter 2 of our Constitution, which is essentially meant to create human development as a prerequisite for peace and order in the country must be sustained. We cannot just say, people are being bought, people are buying, people are offering, people are buying, without addressing the root cause, which is partly that Section 2 of the Constitution, which makes it compulsory, obligatory for public authorities to carry out the issues raised in that section of the must complied with. So I think that is a major issue going forward that we need to do in terms of confronting, in terms of sustaining the gains of Edo last Saturday. I think also we need to address the issue of INEC. The CDD has worked very hard with INEC, and I think, as I've always said, since 2011, INEC has done a fantastic job of sanitizing the electoral process and enhancing through administrative reform within INEC itself and the application of ICT to enhance the integrity of the electoral process. It has done that, but the environment is still very, very hostile and is creating a huge constraint for INEC to continue on this important mission that it is doing to sanitize the political process. And I think in this respect, we must commend INEC for the reform that made it so easy to compute and upload election results in ways that will make it, in fact, difficult for anyone to try and alter election figures. I was impressed that by 11 p.m. on Saturday, some news media based on what was on the INEC portal already predicting projecting results without undermining the electoral law. It's what happens in the US. By the time people have voted within by midnight on election in the US and in most other places, you can see in terms of projections, people are making projections based on results that have been validly declared by the electoral body. So I think this is something that is very, very important, and we hope that the INEC will go forward and go on with the attempts to introduce e-voting. I mean, the e-voting and the e-portal that they tried in Nasarawa. So I think this is just what we want to say, but let it be emphasized that the elections, while we are euphoric about elections, we must also be careful because the snares, the minefields are still there. Anti-democratic forces are still prepared to make it difficult for us to conduct free and fair elections, and that we must be alert, we must be vigilant, and make sure that the gain of Edo last Saturday, that gain is sustained and strengthened going forward. Thank you.
Point before we go to our recommendation is the issue of declining voter turnout in our elections. And this declining voter turnout can be adduced to the earlier issues Professor Jinaja and Professor Ibrahim had actually raised. So if you look at the Edo elections, in the 2003 elections, they had a 78% voter turnout. Now, results for 2003, 2007 are not provided as being extremely credible. 2007 report is of course missing, but in 2012 there was a 40.5, which represents 41% voter turnout. 2016, 32% voter turnout, and by 2020, there is a gross decline to 25.2% turnout by our calculation. 25% turnout. So then we start asking ourselves, why is this really happening? And it is happening because of the environment the political class themselves have actually engendered. The fear of violence, the failure of democracy to actually deliver development. They believe in the art of people that, of course, their vote will not count, which, of course, the introduction of the e-portal, somehow, the result being portal, have added some credibility to the process. These are very important issues that we have to take forward. Having around 500,000 people, 500 plus, determine the outcome of an election, even when the votes are divided in between, are not good enough. But it also boils on the political class to actually do the right thing so that people can come out and vote. And I think the second very important issue is the non-observance of the COVID-19 protocol during this election. And I think that we place on the doorstep of both citizens and, of course, some to the electoral management body itself. And we feel that moving forward towards the Ondo elections, INEC has a dual task to ensure that it actually implements that COVID-19 policy, which he ourselves was actually very proactive enough and one of the first in West Africa to draft such a policy to conduct elections. But a policy is one, implementation is one. And alongside that is also to ensure that there is adequate voter education, not just to bring out the vote, the people to vote during the elections, but the observance of the COVID-19 protocol itself. Protocol itself. I think these are must do. And the same also goes back to the Edo, just concluded Edo elections. Now that the winner has actually been declared, it will be very good to be proactive and conduct massive testing in the state to prevent a health outbreak. I think aside that, of course, we have put out an agenda for electoral reform, which is something that we have been doing for some time. I don't know, maybe before. And I think one of the very important things on electoral reform for us is the first issue that we have made, which has to do with the modality for the selection and nomination of party candidates, both for executive and legislative office. If you go into historical lines, this has been a recurring issue and a cause for violence and the kind of conflict we had in the just concluded election. So strengthening internal party democracy are very, very key. Then enacting legislations that provide conditions for political parties to get on the ballot. So we call that access to ballot rules. Then an approach to the zero-sum politics itself, which is, we proposed no more winner takes all, which of course we have a lot of recommendations from here. And I think a very strong important point here is also to say that most of the recommendations that are in the Waste Panel Committee report and the Inamani report are yet to be implemented. And these are very, very important and critical reform that is actually needed. Aside the pending bills in the National Assembly, we need to have an holistic electoral reform process, aside attitudinal change that can change the nature of policies. And one very important point is also one that talks about enacting legislation to vest the power to deploy state resources and public servants, including the military, police, and other security personnel in INEC 6 months ahead of the election, as it is done in India. So in the Edo elections, we saw that the abuse of incumbency, both at the national and at the state level, was a strong feature of that elections. And how do we get rid of this? And of course, improving the appointment process, working more with the security forces. These are very, very important recommendations for us. And importantly, I think that it is high time we start linking elections to democracy. The whole essence of going to the polls is so that people can have the delivery of public goods and services. a representative government that you have actually elected. But these governments, these elections have not actually led to the delivery of public goods and services to the people. And that again is why you link it to even the vote buying, engagement in violence, and all other incidences that reads our elections. And I think this is a very important point for us. And it's an important point we have actually been making since 2019, that it's not just the delivery of public goods and services to the citizens. These public goods and services, in terms of good roads, also help in improving electoral integrity. So what happens when we talk about the collation process, which is a loose link in our elections, is the dearth of infrastructure in the country. At times, even the late opening of polls is either the bad road, the inability to connect several parts of the state, which are actually responsible for this. So even the political class will have to see this and put it on the table as a to-do if they must win elections, free, fair, and credible itself. So I'll give to Representative.
Thank you. Thank you, Hidayat. So in addition to the points made by Hidayat and other, distinguished professors here, we also want to see in the electoral reform the finance campaign, because as long as some people will privatize and commercialize the nomination process, then it will be difficult for even decent, honest, popular, genuine people to emerge. Because once the whole process is then commercialized, it will be difficult for decent people to actually uphold the registration, of the party nomination. Secondly, the issue of penalty for the election violence. We are so happy that in this last election, just a statement coming from the United Kingdom, European Union, American government had put some sense in some people who, probably ordinarily they will want to address their violence capacity. So it is important that if we are going to have any electoral reform, we deal with issues of people who have particularly continued to perpetuate electoral violence without being punished. Also, in our recommendation, we also want to recommend that the use of technology must be sustained. If you really want to eliminate election malpractices in this country, you must enhance the technology, use of technology. In other parts of the world, technology is used for election matters, but here people are just not willing to get that done. Then, of course, the composition of the election oversight body. I think it is important. We have made several of these recommendations in the past, and it is also still in the West report that there must be political party establishment of political party registration regulation body. That's because the way it is now, ANEC is settled with so many work and they are overwhelmed, and therefore we believe that creating this agency or body will lessen the task of ANEC to focus on actually conducting election. I think finally, the final point that I just want to make is that the synergy, working relationship, with the security agencies, with the ANEC, with the peace, Islam-led peace committee, had actually, provided positive outcome of this election. I remember we had met with the police, Inspector General of Police, and we can see that that's working relationship with civil society and the Inspector General of Police personally, and all the commissioners, of police hierarchy. They met with civil society and agree and share information. And now we have seen the dividends of that. Of course, working with ANEC has also provided us, another, good working relationship to ensure that, everything, that has to do with the election is more transparent. And, we can now see that relationship is, has to be sustained with ANEC. And of course, the eminent peace makers, Abdul Salam and Reverend Kuka, and they had actually, broker, having peaceful election in Do. We hope that in the election coming in Ondo, we are going to see more improvements. We are going to see less, trouble that we have, even the little that we have even experienced on this. We hope that, the people will not be used to undermine the electoral choice of people. I think it is important that, we also, give kudos to the president who came out openly to, express satisfaction of the election that had happened, which, invariably, of course, his candidate lost, but still congratulated, the opposition party. If we continue with this, and results are not changed, I believe that our democracy will grow and we will experience less violence in the electoral process. I think these are some of the, I don't know whether colleague will want to add something. Step out. So, Princess,
yeah?
Do you have one thing that you want to say?
No, not really. I think all of you, you have all made important points on what needs to be done in terms of building democracy and especially enhancing the integrity of the electoral process. Just to say that, like Idat was talking about the voter education, I think that's very important, especially in terms of the public health challenges that comes with the election during COVID-19. And I think maybe more work needs to be done there, so that while INEC has released their policy, the implementation of all policies actually is a major issue. So that they need more. They need to deepen that process so that there'll be more compliance with the policy of voting. Then I also want to say that the result viewing portal has really introduced in this dual election is a major innovation. Because this has really helped also increase citizens' confidence in the process. And hopefully going forward, the little glitches with the technology related to it will be resolved so that, people will have better benefits in terms of using the portal. Thank you.
Okay. So, we don't know if you have some question you want to ask, so that we will attempt to respond. Question, please. You're all okay. So, Kole, you want to say final thing? Okay, on behalf of the eminent professors here,
including you.
no. We would like, on behalf of Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, election analysis, to thank you for coming to this, briefing. As usual, we hope to call you soon for the Ondo. We will not get there until when democracy works, because one of the cardinal reasons why CDD was established is to ensure that democracy works, not only in Nigeria but in West Africa. So we will continue to engage you until when democracy is actually fully, strengthened in West Africa. Thank you for coming.